Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 1788, and today's date is February 11th, 2019, and the title of the episode is, Did Trump Just Expose the Central Bank System and Trap Them at the Same Time? Now, before we get started, have you ever noticed down at your local supermarket the staff are getting older? The older generation needs to work, and really you have to ask why it changed. The only reason that you're going to be working into your retirement is that you didn't save enough, or what you saved didn't work hard enough for you. Retirement doesn't come cheap, so you need to do something different, something which beats inflation, not just keeps pace with it. Now, precious metals have proved time and time again they smash inflation and rising costs. So call Noble Gold Investments at 877-646-5347 or fill out the link below to receive the free gold and silver investment guide. Let's get into the economic collapse financial news. Now, Trump is continually keeping the economic illusion alive. And what I mean by this is that he's continually out there pushing the idea that the economy is doing well, trying to get the mainstream media to acknowledge the economy is doing well. If you notice, they never want to give him kudos for this economy. You know why? They know it's fake. They know he's using their weapons against them. Remember, there are a couple things going on here. One, we have Trump out there, and he's manipulating the economic numbers, the stock market. He has the magic wand. He's then using this and telling and forcing the mainstream media to acknowledge it. If you notice from his tweets, he continually says the economy is doing fantastic. Only if the mainstream media would recognize this. He wants the mainstream media to recognize that he has taken the old economy that Obama was running and made it incredible. The question is, why is he doing this? He's doing it because he's setting them up. He wants everyone around the world, the mainstream media, to understand that he has made the economy fantastic. This is going to be one gigantic setup. And the setup is to point the finger at the Federal Reserve. That's what this is all about. And not just the Federal Reserve, but the central banks around the world. And when I say the central banks, I mean the private central banks, which are controlled by the Rothschild. This is why Q filled us in on all the central banks around the world and made it clear that these central banks, they are controlled by the Rothschilds. But in reality, he knows the economy can only last a certain period of time under this central bank illusion. And he knows he only has a small window. Yes, can he continually kick the can down the street? Of course he can. He can make the numbers look fantastic. The central banks have been doing this for a very long time. He's just taking control over it. The problem, and the same problem with the central banks, is that the people will start to feel it. And many people are feeling it. And when the people start to feel it, this is when you lose the illusion. Now, we are definitely seeing this in the real estate market. We've seen it in retail. We've seen that retail sales is not as great as everyone has said they are. We're seeing it in real estate. Things are rapidly falling apart, and Trump knows he has this small window of time. And he needs to control the narrative, which he is, to blame everything on the central bank. Now, if we look at some of the real estate, we can see that things are deteriorating very, very quickly. Look at New York, for instance. 52% of the homes listed for sale last spring still have not sold. For sellers, the situation calls for a clear strategy to cut prices. Over half the 12,000 plus homes that were listed for sale in New York City on Street Easy during the peak listing months of March, April, May 2018 still have not sold as of early February. Now, in Manhattan, we see 56% of the homes listed in March, April, and May of 2018 have not yet sold. What makes buyers reluctant are the prices that are declining. The Street Easy Median Price Index for Manhattan at 1.132 million in December is back where it had been in September 2015. For the past 6 months in a row, the median price index for Manhattan has fallen below the same month a year earlier. These are the first such year-over-year declines since housing bust number 1. So the higher the price, the harder it gets. Buyers, just like they did during 2007, 2008, they don't want to pay a premium on the homes. Homes listed at less than 1 million, 45% failed to sell. Homes listed at 1 million or more, 61% failed to sell. Homes listed at 5 million or more, 79% failed to sell. You can see that it's starting to affect the real estate market. Now, this is going to move down the price range. We saw this happen back in 2006, going into 2007, 2008. It started at the higher priced homes, and then it moved down to the lower priced homes, and this took some time, but they eventually got there. We're seeing the same thing happen once again. Trump knows that he only has a small window to make this transition, and they're working very, very quickly to bring manufacturing back to the United States, to redo the trade deals, and to put everything in place for this major transition. We see what's happening in Venezuela, Syria. He's dismantling the central bank system. Now, the global central bank easy money experiment, it has completely failed. Why has it failed? Because they thought that there was going to be someone else in the office of the president. And they thought they were going to use some type of an event to cover up this depression, recession, this collapse of the economy. What has happened right now is that Trump, he is not pushing for war. He's actually doing the opposite. He's pushing for peace. And what we see happening right now is the central banks that created this illusion, they don't know what to do. They are stuck. Think about it. Europe, they're ready to enter a recession. We have the Brexit going on at the same time. We have Italy fighting against the central bank system. And we see Europe right now, they're not going to be raising rates. They can't at this point. The Fed is trapped. The ECB is trapped. The Bank of Japan is trapped. They don't know what to do at this point. They've never been in this situation before where they didn't have an event to cover up their system imploding. Think about what Trump has done here. And not just Trump, the Patriots. In the beginning, Trump came out and he started to point the finger at the Fed. Every time they raised the rates, Trump said, look what they're doing. They're raising the rates. The stock market's falling. Everything's falling apart. Please stop doing this. The Fed did it again and again and again. And people saw that every time the Fed did this, something happened. The economy came down. So now they put one and one together, and they noticed, by Trump pointing this out, that the Fed is responsible. When they raise rates, they bring down the economic system. Now, the other central banks, they were depending on the Federal Reserve to raise rates. They were going to follow suit. They were going to unwind at the same time the Fed was going to unwind. And they were going to do this all together. Think about why they were going to do all this together. Remember, their plan was to bring down the economy in 2020. Not just the U.S. economy, but the European economy, the Japanese economy, and the rest. All of it would have come down all at the same time. They planned this out. They were going to blame Trump. Hughes told us that they already knew of the plan. Trump took control of the Federal Reserve. Powell is in his back pocket. Powell is doing what he's instructed to do. He's told not to raise rates because we don't want to have a recession, a depression in 2020. The mainstream media, they're stuck right now. They put out news article after news article letting everyone know that in 2020, we're going to have a recession. which we are not. Basically, what Trump did was he kicked the can down the street. He's using their weapons against them. So what does the ECB and the Bank of Japan, what do they do right now? What does the IMF do right now? They're all dependent on the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve is the key. They can't do anything. If they start to raise rates without the Federal Reserve, they bring down their economy. So what do? They can't do anything. They're trapped. By Trump taking control over the Fed, he has trapped the other central bank system. They're exposed right now to the world. If anything happens to the economy, they are the ones who are responsible for it. Remember, what happens when we enter recession with over 100% public debt to GDP, over $9 trillion in corporate debt, and a Fed who's still carrying a $4 trillion balance sheet? What do you think happens to the U.S. economy? What do you think happens to the European economy? What do you think happens to the Japanese economy? I know they have their own problems. Everything falls apart. Who is to blame for all of this? The central banks. But remember, Trump, the Patriots, they are making it worse for the central banks. They're removing the petrodollar system one piece at a time. Syria, Iraq, Libya, Lebanon, now Venezuela. Once all of that stops, the central banks really have nowhere to go at this point. Their system starts to implode. Trump then will point the finger at the Fed. Now, do I think it's going to happen this year or next year? No. I think it's going to happen once he's back in office after he wins the election in 2020. Once that happens, Trump then is free to do whatever he wants. At that point, I think in the beginning of his term, we're going to see everything accelerate like we've never seen before. The pointing of the finger at the Fed, the deterioration of the economy, everything falling apart, it will then all be blamed on the Fed. Trump will control the narrative. Trump will point the finger at the Fed, then point the finger at other central banks, letting the world know that his economy is fantastic. It's what the Fed is doing. Do you think the Fed is going to raise rates at that point? Most likely, yes. Why? Because Trump at that point wants the Fed to bring down the economy. At that point, Trump and the Patriots will have everything in place. The trade deals, manufacturing being brought back to the United States. They'll have the new currency ironed out. Everything will be put into place. Gold then will be used to bring the Fed down and replace this debt note with sound money. Now, will this be an easy thing? No, it will probably be a very bumpy ride. How long will it last? We don't know. This is why everyone needs to be prepared and ready for when this comes. Now we have time. If Trump wasn't in office, you wouldn't have any time. Actually, it probably would have happened already. Trump has given us time. This means you have some time to prepare. And what I mean by preparing is have food supplies, have water, have gold and silver to ensure your wealth, have some cryptocurrencies. Make sure that you're prepared for any situation. You don't want to be stuck when everything starts to fall apart, because then it's too late. And this is about being prepared, not for a Mad Max type of scenario. It might get a little bumpy in certain areas, especially the inner city, where people haven't prepared. So you might see, small riots, you might see things like that. But the country in a whole will weather the storm, and I believe the Patriots, they're going to make this time span as short as possible, and they're going to try to get everything up and running very quickly. And I believe they'll be able to do this because once you get rid of the central bank and you get rid of all this debt and you get rid of this fake currency and you bring in sound money, everything all of a sudden just revalues, and all of a sudden you have something that's much, much better. And if you look at other economies that have done this, you can see they got back on their feet quite quickly. Now, do I think it's going to happen in a week? No, I think it's going to take a little bit longer than that. And that's why you need to be ready and prepared for that time period. And I believe that we have the time now. We have the time to prepare for this transition. And that's what everyone should be focused on right now. Yes, there's going to be arrests. Yes, a lot of things are going to change. But we also need to protect our families, ourselves, because we're going to be coming from one system to another. Think about the 70s. We were coming from the gold standard, moving on to the petrodollar system, and the Fed was creating currency like crazy. We had gas lines. We had people that were unemployed. The interest rates were very high. Now we're coming from a huge amount of debt, paper, fake currency, and moving to sound money. So we're moving in the opposite direction. So it's going to be a little bit bumpy because we're coming off a system where pretty much your paper note is going to be devalued quite a bit. But those people that are holding gold and silver and that type of stuff, that will be revalued very, very high compared to the debt note that you're holding. So the whole point of this is to be prepared and ready for when this comes. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.